The signature on the acquisition papers made Ethan's blood freeze. The familiar scrawl of Richard Kane's name stared back at him from the contract. The same handwriting he'd memorized from a single birthday card 25 years ago. The only thing his father had ever given him before vanishing forever. Ethan's hands trembled as he set down the documents in his modest San Francisco office. Kane Industries wanted to buy his AI company, Axiom Technologies, for $2.8 billion. The offer had arrived that morning through intermediaries, and he'd been celebrating just minutes ago with his small team of 12 employees who'd believed in his vision when no one else would. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Mayachin said, stepping into his office with 2 cups of coffee. His lead engineer and closest friend had been with him since the beginning, when they'd coded their first prototype in her garage while surviving on ramen noodles and determination. Ethan couldn't speak. The room felt like it was spinning. Richard Kane, the tech billionaire whose ruthless empire building had made headlines for decades, was his father. The same man who'd walked out on Christmas morning 1999, leaving behind a 6-year-old boy and a mother who'd never recovered from the betrayal. "Ethan." Maya's voice seemed to come from underwater. "What's wrong?" He looked up at her, this brilliant woman who'd never known her own father, who understood ambition born from abandonment. "The buyer," he managed. "It's him." Maya frowned, scanning the papers. "Richard Kane? The guy's a legend. Brutal, but—" She stopped, her eyes widening as understanding hit. "Oh my God. Kane. You're my father." The word tasted like poison. For 25 years, Ethan had built his life on a single promise. He would succeed so completely, so brilliantly, that the man who'd abandoned him would have no choice but to see what he'd thrown away. He'd changed his last name to Sullivan, his mother's maiden name, and built Axiom from nothing, developing AI technology that was already revolutionizing healthcare and education. Now that man wanted to buy him. Own him. Again. Maya sank into the chair across from his desk. "He doesn't know, does he? That you're his son?" Ethan shook his head. The bitter irony was perfect. Richard Kane, the man who'd spent decades acquiring companies and destroying competitors, was about to offer billions to the son he'd once decided wasn't worth staying for. The meeting was set for tomorrow at the Global Tech Summit in Seattle. Neutral ground. High-profile venue. Ethan had 12 hours to decide whether to reveal his identity or play the game from the shadows. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Kane Industries confirmed for 2 p.m. tomorrow. They're sending Richard Kane himself. Apparently, he's very interested in meeting the mysterious genius behind Axiom." Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. 25 years of wondering, of building himself into someone worthy of staying for, and his father wanted to meet him without even knowing who he was. The birthday card sat in his desk drawer, the only proof he'd ever had that Richard Kane remembered his existence. "Happy 6th birthday, son. Daddy has to go away for work, but I'll always be proud of you." "Dad." "Lies. All of it." Maya was watching him carefully. "What are you going to do?" Ethan looked out the window at the city where he'd built his dreams from the ashes of abandonment. Tomorrow, he would sit across from the man who'd taught him that love was conditional and success was the only currency that mattered. "I'm going to give him exactly what he deserves," Ethan said quietly. But first, he had a choice to make. Reveal himself as the son Richard had abandoned, or destroy the father who'd never bothered to look back. The contract sat between them like a loaded gun, Richard Kane's signature a reminder of every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone that had passed without a word from the man who'd promised to always be proud of him. Ethan picked up his phone and dialed his assistant. "Cancel all my meetings tomorrow except one. And book me a flight to Seattle." Tomorrow, Richard Kane would meet his son. He just wouldn't know it yet. Welcome back to another story that's going to take you on an emotional journey you won't forget. I'm so glad you're here with me today. As Ethan stared at that signature, 25 years of buried pain came rushing back. But this wasn't just about revenge. This was about a choice that would define everything he'd built and everything he could become. What would you do if the person who'd abandoned you suddenly wanted to buy your life's work? Hold on to that thought as we dive deeper into this story that's going to challenge everything you think you know about family, success, and forgiveness. The flight to Seattle gave Ethan 3 hours to remember what he'd spent 25 years trying to forget. Christmas morning, 1999. His 6-year-old hands had shaken his father awake at dawn, desperate to show him the robot he'd built from Legos, his first real creation. Richard had smiled, tousled his hair, and promised they'd play after breakfast. But when Ethan had rushed downstairs an hour later, clutching his robot, he'd found only his mother crying at the kitchen table, holding a note that said Richard had accepted a position in Tokyo and wouldn't be coming back. "Why did Daddy leave?" 6-year-old Ethan had asked, his robot forgotten on the floor. His mother, Sarah, had pulled him close, her tears falling into his hair. "Because some people love their dreams more than they love the people in them." Maya settled into the seat beside him, laptop open. "I've been digging into Kane Industries' acquisition history," she said quietly. "Ethan, there's something you need to see." She turned the screen toward him. Financial records, carefully compiled, showed a pattern that made his stomach clench. Every year, on his birthday for the past 19 years, Richard Kane had transferred exactly $50,000 into a trust fund under Ethan's original name, Ethan Kane. "He's been, what?" Ethan stared at the numbers, his world tilting. "Sending money. Your mother never told you." Maya's voice was gentle, but her eyes held something else. "Pity." Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Sweetheart, I know you're going to Seattle. There are things I should have told you. Can we talk when you get back?" The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. Not just his father's abandonment, but his mother's 25 years of lies. She'd let him believe Richard had never looked back, never cared, while secretly accepting nearly $1 million over the years. "The money," he whispered. "Paid for your private school," Maya said, scrolling through bank records. "Your MIT tuition. The seed funding for Axiom, indirectly. Your mother invested it, used it for your education and future." Ethan felt sick. Every achievement, every moment of pride in building something from nothing, all of it tainted by his father's money. Money given in secret, probably to ease a guilty conscience while he built his empire on the other side of the world. "She must have known," Maya continued carefully, "that if you'd known about the money, you never would have taken it." She was right. Ethan would have rather starved than accept a penny from the man who'd abandoned them. His pride, his drive to prove himself, it had all been built on what he thought was pure self-reliance. Maya closed the laptop and studied his face. "There's more." "More what?" "I found out why Kane Industries is really interested in Axiom." She hesitated. "They're not just buying us for our AI technology. Richard Kane is dying." The words hit him like ice water. "What?" "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. He's got maybe 6 months." Maya's voice was soft. "The acquisition isn't about expanding his empire. He's liquidating it, selling off everything and distributing assets. This isn't a business deal, Ethan. This is a dying man trying to tie up loose ends." Ethan stared out the plane window at the clouds below. His father was dying. The man he'd spent decades hating, competing with, trying to prove himself to, was dying. And somehow, that made everything worse. "Did he know?" Ethan asked. "When he set up the trust fund, did he know I was building a tech company?" Maya nodded slowly. "The timing of the fund increases matches your major milestones. When you got into MIT, the deposit doubled. When you founded Axiom, it tripled. He's been watching you." Watching. Not reaching out, not making contact, but watching from a distance while secretly funding the very success Ethan thought he'd achieved on his own. "He knows who I am," Ethan realized. "He's always known." "The acquisition offer," Maya said gently. "I think it's his way of trying to give you everything. Not just buy your company, give you his entire empire. Kane Industries is worth $47 billion. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. So he thinks he can buy forgiveness? 25 years too late. But even as he said it, doubt crept in. If Richard was dying, if he'd been secretly supporting Ethan's dreams all these years, maybe the man who'd walked away wasn't the monster Ethan had spent decades believing him to be. Maya reached for his hand. What if he didn't leave because he didn't love you? What if he left because he did? The possibility terrified him more than hatred ever had. Hatred was clean, simple. It had fueled every late night of coding, every impossible deadline met, every competitor crushed. If his father had left out of love, to protect them somehow, to give them a better life, then the foundation of everything Ethan had built was a lie. "The meeting tomorrow," Maya said. "Are you going to tell him who you are?" Ethan closed his eyes, remembering the robot he'd built that Christmas morning. The father who'd smiled and promised to play. The man who'd walked away and never looked back, except he had looked back. He'd been looking back for 25 years. "I don't know who I am anymore," Ethan admitted. "Everything I thought I knew." Maya squeezed his hand. "You're still the man who built Axiom from nothing. You're still the person who's about to revolutionize how AI serves humanity. Money in a trust fund doesn't change that. But it did change things. It changed everything. As the plane began its descent into Seattle, Ethan realized he wasn't just going to meet his father. He was going to meet a stranger who somehow knew him better than he knew himself. The question was, which one of them was the real fraud? The Kane Industries headquarters in Seattle looked like a monument to everything Ethan had spent his life fighting against. 70 floors of glass and steel reaching toward clouds, with Richard Kane's name carved into black granite at the entrance. As Ethan walked through the lobby with Maya beside him, he felt like he was entering enemy territory. "You don't have to do this," Maya whispered as they stepped into the executive elevator. But he did. The moment he'd seen his father's signature on those papers, there was no turning back. The elevator opened directly into Richard Kane's office on the 69th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the entire city, and Ethan's first thought was that his father had literally built himself above everyone else. Then he saw the man himself. Richard Kane stood with his back to them, looking out at the skyline. At 68, he was smaller than Ethan had imagined, his once broad shoulders slightly stooped. When he turned around, Ethan felt his breath catch. His father's eyes were the same green as his own, the same stubborn jawline. 25 years had carved lines into Richard's face, but the intelligence in his gaze was sharp as ever. Those eyes studied Ethan with an intensity that made him feel transparent. "Mr. Sullivan," Richard said, extending his hand. "The genius behind Axiom Technologies." Ethan shook his father's hand and felt the strange, surreal moment of touching someone who shared his DNA, but was essentially a stranger. "Mr. Kane, please call me Richard. And you must be Ms. Chun." Richard turned to Maya with genuine warmth. "Your work on quantum neural networks is extraordinary. I've been following your research for years." Maya blushed slightly. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." They settled into leather chairs around a conference table that probably cost more than most people's cars. Richard poured coffee from an expensive service, and Ethan noticed his hands had the slightest tremor. "The cancer." "I'll be direct," Richard said, settling into his chair across from them. "I want to buy Axiom not because I need your technology, but because I need your vision." "Our vision." Ethan kept his voice carefully neutral. Richard smiled, and for a moment, Ethan caught a glimpse of the man who'd once promised to play robots with his 6-year-old son. "You're building AI that serves humanity instead of replacing it. In an industry obsessed with efficiency and profit, you're focused on empathy and connection. That's rare." "And valuable?" Maya asked. "Invaluable." Richard's expression grew serious. "Which is why I need to tell you something that isn't in any of the acquisition paperwork. Kane Industries is being targeted for a hostile takeover by Meridian Corporation." Ethan knew the name. Meridian was run by Victor Chun, Maya's uncle, though she rarely spoke about him. A man who'd built his fortune by acquiring promising tech companies and gutting them for patents while destroying their innovations. Maya's face had gone pale. "Uncle Victor is trying to buy Kane Industries? You know him?" Richard's eyes sharpened. "He's my father's brother," Maya said quietly. "We haven't spoken in years. He tried to steal my research when I was working at Stanford. When I refused to sell it to him, he had me blacklisted from every major tech company." Ethan felt pieces clicking into place. "That's why you were working in a garage when I found you." Maya nodded, her jaw tight. "Victor Chin destroys anything he can't control. If he gets Kane Industries, he gets access to every company I've acquired over the past 30 years, Richard finished. "Including, if this deal goes through, Axiom Technologies." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about father and son anymore. This was about protecting everything Ethan and Maya had built from a man who would tear it apart for profit. "There's more," Richard continued. "Victor knows about the acquisition offer. He's been trying to contact you, Mr. Sullivan. When that fails, he'll come after your investors, your employees, your patents. He has resources I can't match in a straight fight." Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Ethan Sullivan. We should meet. I have an offer that will make Kane's look like pocket change. V. Chun." Maya saw the message and her face went white. "He found you. How long do we have?" Ethan asked Richard. "His hostile takeover launches Monday. 3 days." Richard leaned forward. "But if we complete the Axiom acquisition by Sunday night, I can trigger a legal clause that blocks the takeover for 6 months. Long enough to fight him properly. And if we don't?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Richard's expression grew grim. Victor Chen will own both of our companies by Tuesday. Everything you've built, everything I've built, will be dismantled and sold for parts. Ethan stood and walked to the windows, looking down at the city below. His father was dying. His life's work was under threat. The woman he'd grown to love over years of late-night coding sessions was facing the destruction of everything she'd rebuilt after her uncle's betrayal. And none of them could win this fight alone. "There's something else," Richard said quietly. "Something I should have told you at the beginning." Ethan turned back, dreading what was coming. "I know who you are, Ethan." Richard's voice was barely above a whisper. "I've known since the day you incorporated Axiom Technologies. When you changed your name to Sullivan, I thought you wanted nothing to do with me. But I've been watching your career, your innovations, your success. I've never been more proud of anything in my life." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. Maya gasped, her eyes darting between them. Maya started. "Father and son," Richard confirmed. "And now Victor Chen is targeting both of us, probably knowing exactly who Ethan is. This isn't just business anymore. This is personal." Ethan felt the weight of 25 years crashing down on him. His father knew, had always known, had been proud, and now they were both about to lose everything to a man who specialized in destroying families and dreams. "The acquisition," Ethan said slowly. "It's not just about buying my company." "No," Richard admitted. "It's about giving you the tools to protect what we've both built. Kane Industries, combined with Axiom's innovation, might be strong enough to survive Victor's attack." Maya stood and moved to Ethan's side. "We have to do it," she said quietly. "It's the only way to save Axiom." But Ethan was looking at his father, really looking at him for the first time. The man who'd walked away 25 years ago was now asking him to walk toward the biggest fight of their lives. "Together. If we do this," Ethan said, "I need to know why you left." Richard closed his eyes. "Because Victor Chen threatened to destroy your mother's medical practice, and have you taken away if I didn't leave the country. I thought giving you up was the only way to keep you safe." The truth hit Ethan like a tsunami. His father hadn't abandoned them. He'd sacrificed himself to protect them. And now, 25 years later, they were facing the same enemy. Victor's been playing a long game, Maya realized. Separating you, then targeting you both when you were isolated. Ethan looked at Maya, then at his father. 3 people who'd been damaged by the same man, now standing together for the first time. "All right," Ethan said. "Let's give Victor Chen the fight he's been asking for." But as they shook hands on the deal that would change everything, none of them realized that Victor Chen was already 3 moves ahead, and he had one more card to play that would destroy them all. The war room Richard set up in his penthouse apartment felt like a bunker. Legal documents covered every surface, laptops hummed with encrypted communications, and 3 of the best corporate lawyers' money could buy worked around the clock to finalize the Axiom acquisition before Victor's Monday deadline. Ethan hadn't slept in 36 hours. Neither had Maya. They'd been living on coffee and adrenaline, racing against time to transfer patents, assets, and legal protections before Victor could strike. But something felt wrong. "The paperwork's too easy," Maya said, rubbing her exhausted eyes. "We're moving billions of dollars in complex IP transfers, but everything's going through without a hitch." Richard looked up from his medication. The pain pills he'd been trying to hide were now openly on the table. "Victor wants us to complete the acquisition. He's letting us." "Why would he?" Ethan stopped. The implications hit him like ice water. "Because he already has a way to take it all anyway." Maya's phone rang. Unknown number. She glanced at Ethan, then answered on speaker. "Maya." Victor Chen's voice was smooth, cultivated. "My brilliant niece. Still playing with toys instead of building an empire." "Uncle Victor." Maya's voice was steady, but Ethan saw her hands shake. "What do you want?" "To offer you something your new partners can't. The truth." There was amusement in Victor's tone. "Did you know that your friend Ethan has been stealing your research? Every patent filed under Axiom Technologies lists him as primary inventor, with you as a minor contributor." Maya's eyes snapped to Ethan. "That's not. Check the filings, dear niece. Your quantum neural network breakthrough? His name. The empathetic AI protocols you developed? His credit. He's been positioning himself to push you out the moment the company goes public." Ethan felt his world tilt. "Maya, that's insane. You know I would never." "Do I?" Maya's voice was quiet, dangerous. "Because I just realized I've never actually seen the patent filings. You always handled the legal paperwork. Richard was already pulling up documents on his laptop. The filings are... Christ. His face went pale. Maya, every patent lists Ethan as sole inventor. The legal structure gives him complete control over all technological assets. I never filed those papers, Ethan said desperately. Maya, you have to believe me. I don't even know how. Your assistant, Jennifer. Victor's voice cut through the chaos. Lovely girl. Very thorough. Very well compensated for ensuring all legal documents reflect the proper hierarchy. Maya stood abruptly, backing away from Ethan. Jennifer's been working for you? For 3 years, Victor confirmed. Since the day you founded Axiom. Every email, every development meeting, every breakthrough, I've been watching it all. Waiting for the right moment to collect what's mine. Ethan felt like he was drowning. Maya, please. You know me. You know I would never steal from you. But doubt had crept into her eyes. The same doubt that had been there when her uncle had destroyed her Stanford career. The seed funding for Axiom, she said slowly. Where did it really come from? From Investor's Eye, Ethan stopped. The timing. The mysterious angel investor who'd provided their initial capital. Oh God. Richard was scrolling through financial records. The seed funding came from a subsidiary of Chun Holdings. Victor's been funding Axiom from the beginning. Which makes all your technology legally mine. Victor's voice was triumphant. Developed with my money, in a company structure I designed. You've been working for me all along, Maya. Just like your dear friend Ethan. Maya was looking at Ethan like she'd never seen him before. Is that why you found me? Because your real investor told you to. No. Ethan reached for her, but she stepped back. Maya, I met you by accident. At that coffee shop near Stanford. You were working on code and The coffee shop 3 blocks from Chun Holdings headquarters, Victor interrupted. Where my people suggested you might find a certain brilliant engineer who'd been blacklisted and was desperate for a fresh start. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Every moment of connection, every late night they'd spent building something beautiful together. It had all been orchestrated by the man who'd destroyed Maya's life once before. The acquisition, Richard said grimly. Victor doesn't need to take over Kane Industries. If he owns Axiom's technology and can prove Ethan defrauded Maya, he can seize everything through the courts. Maya was staring at legal documents, her face a mask of betrayal. 20 patents. 5 years of work. All listed under your name, Ethan. I swear to you, I never knew. Like you never knew about your father's money funding your education? Maya's voice was ice. How many lies, Ethan? How many things you never knew about your own life? The words hit him like physical blows. She was right. He'd been blind to the money, blind to the manipulation, blind to everything except his own need to prove himself to a father who'd been watching all along. Maya, Victor's voice turned gentle, predatory. Come home. Work for me willingly, and I'll make sure you get credit for everything you've created. Continue this charade, and I'll destroy not just Ethan, but your father as well. Yes, I know about his gambling debts. Such a shame if his creditors became impatient. Maya closed her eyes. You're threatening my father now? I'm offering you a choice. Your family's safety, proper credit for your work, and a position as CTO of the largest tech conglomerate in Asia. Or you can stand with the men who've been lying to you and watch everything burn. Richard's phone buzzed with a news alert. His face went ashen. Kane Industries stock is in free fall. Someone leaked information about the acquisition and my cancer diagnosis. The board is calling for emergency meetings. That would be my doing, Victor said pleasantly. Amazing how quickly shareholders lose confidence when they realize a dying man is making desperate deals with convicted fraudsters. Convicted fraudsters? Ethan's blood went cold. Check your email, my boy. Federal investigators are very interested in your financial records. Amazing what they found when they looked into Axiom's funding sources. Money laundering is such a serious offense. Ethan's laptop chimed with incoming emails from the FBI. Asset freezing orders. Investigation notices. Criminal fraud allegations. I've been setting this up for 3 years, Victor continued. Every move you've made, every success you've celebrated has been part of my design. The only question now is whether Maya chooses to be a victim or a survivor. Maya was standing between Ethan and Richard, tears streaming down her face. The 2 men she'd trusted most in the world, and both of them had built their lives on secrets and lies. I need time to think, she whispered. Time is the one thing you don't have, Victor said. The FBI will be at your office in 6 hours. Kane Industries will be delisted by market open. And Ethan will be arrested for fraud by sunset tomorrow unless he surrenders his assets voluntarily. Maya looked at Ethan, and for a moment he saw the woman who'd worked beside him for 5 years, who'd believed in his vision when no one else would. But he also saw the betrayal, the doubt, the fear that she'd been played again by the men in her life. "There's something else," she said quietly, not looking at either of them. "Something I haven't told you." Richard and Ethan both turned to her. "Victor's offer isn't just about my work," Maya continued. "He's been in contact with me for months, trying to convince me to leave Axiom. And I've been considering it." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. "What?" "The patents, Ethan. I've known about the filings for weeks. I hired a lawyer to investigate." Maya finally met his eyes. "I wanted to believe you were protecting me somehow, that there was a reason my name wasn't on our work. But when I couldn't find any evidence that you were planning to fix it." "You've been planning to leave?" Maya nodded, fresh tears falling. "Victor's right about one thing. I can't build my future on other people's lies. Not again." As if summoned by her words, the apartment's security system chimed. 3 men in FBI windbreakers were at the door with a warrant. Richard struggled to his feet, his face gray with pain and defeat. "They're here for both of us," he told Ethan. "Victor's been building fraud cases against Kane Industries too. We're done." But as the agents entered the apartment, Ethan realized the cruelest twist of all. Maya wasn't just walking away from him. She was walking toward the only person who could save her career, her family, and her future. Even if it meant destroying the 2 men who'd claimed to love her. The war was over before it had truly begun. And Victor Chun had won without firing a single shot. The FBI agents separated them into different rooms. Ethan found himself alone with Agent Sarah Morrison, a sharp-eyed woman who laid out evidence like a surgeon arranging instruments. 3 years of wire transfers from Chun Holdings subsidiaries to Axiom Technologies, she said, spreading photos across the table. Money laundering through 14 shell companies. Corporate espionage. Patent fraud. "We have enough to put you away for 20 years, Mr. Kane." "Kane." Ethan's blood froze. "I'm Ethan Sullivan." Agent Morrison smiled coldly. "Your birth name is Ethan Richard Kane, son of tech mogul Richard Kane and Dr. Sarah Kane, formerly Sullivan. You changed your name legally at 18, but you never changed your social security number. Sloppy for a genius." The room felt like it was spinning. If the FBI knew his real identity, then Victor had known all along. Everything, the coffee shop meeting with Maya, the funding, the patents, had been orchestrated around the fact that he was Richard Kane's son. "Victor Chin has been planning this for 25 years, Agent Morrison continued. "Ever since your father forced him out of their original partnership." "Partnership?" "Kane and Chin Technologies. They built the first generation of AI algorithms together in 1998. Your father stole the company and the woman." Agent Morrison's smile was predatory. "Victor's been waiting a quarter-century for revenge." Ethan's world tilted. "What woman?" "Your mother, Dr. Sarah Kane. She was Victor's fiancée before she met your father." The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. His mother had been engaged to Victor Chin. His father had stolen both the company and the woman Victor loved. And Ethan had been the product of that theft. Through the interrogation room's one-way glass, he could see Maya in the adjacent room, crying as she read documents. Agent Morrison followed his gaze. "Miss Chin is quite talented," she said casually. "Shame she's about to lose everything too. She's innocent in this." "Is she?" Agent Morrison slid another folder across the table. "Maya Chin has been reporting to her uncle for 3 years. Every meeting, every breakthrough, every private conversation between you and your father. We have the recordings." Ethan's heart stopped. "That's impossible. The watch you gave her last Christmas. Beautiful piece. Cartier, wasn't it? Custom designed with a hidden transmitter. She's been wearing a wire to every meeting for 8 months." The room felt like it was collapsing. The watch had been his Christmas gift to Maya, a symbol of their partnership, their growing feelings for each other. He'd had it engraved with the date they'd first met. "She doesn't know," Ethan whispered. "She couldn't know." "Oh, she knows." Agent Morrison opened the folder. "The watch was her idea. She suggested you buy it after Victor threatened to have her father killed. She's been playing you from the beginning." The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings of Maya's conversations with Victor. Bank records showing payments to her father's gambling debts. Video surveillance of secret meetings in parking garages and coffee shops. And photos. Maya kissing another man outside a hotel. Maya laughing as she showed Victor confidential Axiom documents. Maya crying as she called Victor, the only family she had left. The man in the photos, Agent Morrison said gently. Dr. James Chun. Victor's son. Maya's cousin. They've been engaged for 2 years. Ethan couldn't breathe. Every late night they'd spent together, every moment of connection, every time she'd looked at him like he was the most important person in her world. It had all been performance. She's good, Agent Morrison continued. We've been watching her manipulate you for months. The way she makes you feel like the smartest person in the room while extracting every piece of information Victor needs. The way she builds your confidence right before delivering the intelligence that lets him stay 3 steps ahead. Through the glass, Maya looked up and met Ethan's eyes. For a split second, he saw something that might have been real regret. Then she looked away. Agent Morrison slid one final document across the table. Her cooperation agreement. Full immunity in exchange for testimony against you and your father. She signed it an hour ago. The cooperation agreement was dated 3 months earlier. Maya had been planning to betray him since before the acquisition talks even began. Why? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. Because Victor Chen doesn't just want your companies. He wants to destroy the Kane family completely. Your father stole his life's work and the woman he loved. You're Richard Kane's heir. Everything he couldn't have, you represented. Agent Morrison leaned forward. But Maya was never the target, Mr. Kane. You were. Everything Victor has done for 25 years has been leading to this moment. The moment Richard Kane's son realizes that everything he built, everything he achieved, everyone he loved, it was all an illusion designed to destroy him. A commotion erupted in the hallway. Richard Kane was being led away in handcuffs, his lawyer shouting about illegal searches and medical exemptions. Through the chaos, Ethan heard his father calling his name. Tell him, Richard shouted as agents forced him toward the exit. Tell him about Sarah's letter. Agent Morrison checked her watch. Your mother's been arrested too. Conspiracy charges. Turns out that trust fund money, it came from Victor all along. Your father thought he was secretly supporting you, but Victor was using him to launder money while documenting every transaction. Ethan felt the last foundations of his reality crumble. The money that had funded his education, his company, his entire life. It had come from the man who'd been orchestrating his destruction. There's one more thing, Agent Morrison said, almost gently. The offer to buy Axiom? That wasn't Richard's idea. Victor suggested it. He wanted you and your father working together, trusting each other, building something beautiful together, so he could destroy it all at once. Maya appeared in the doorway, flanked by her own FBI handler. She'd been crying, but her eyes were dry now. Resolved. I need to speak with him, she said. Agent Morrison nodded and stepped out, leaving them alone. Maya sat across from Ethan, the same chair she'd occupied during 1,000 strategy meetings, 100 late-night coding sessions, dozens of quiet moments when he'd thought they were falling in love. Was any of it real? He asked. Maya closed her eyes. When I put that watch on every morning, I hated myself. When I saw how much you trusted me, how much you... She stopped, unable to finish. How much I what? How much you loved me. The words came out broken. Because I loved you too. That was never part of the plan. Ethan wanted to believe her, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings. The photos. The engagement to Victor's son. James, he said. The man in the photos. My cousin. And yes, we're engaged. Have been for 3 years. Maya's voice was steady now. It was arranged. Our family's business merger. I never had a choice. You always have a choice. Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. Victor has my father. He is James. He has evidence of crimes I never committed, but can't prove I didn't. The only choice I had was which man I betrayed, you or the family that raised me. She reached across the table and touched his hand. For a moment, her mask slipped completely. I chose my family, she whispered. But that doesn't mean it didn't destroy me. Ethan looked at their joined hands. Her wearing the watch he'd given her, him wearing the ring his mother had passed down from his grandfather. 3 generations of Kane men, all destroyed by the same enemy. Victor wins, he said. Victor wins, Maya agreed. But Ethan, there's something else. Something I couldn't tell the FBI because it would destroy more than just us. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. Richard isn't your father. The words hit him like a physical blow. What? The DNA test Victor ordered. Richard Kane never had children. Can't have children. Your real father, Maya's voice broke. Your real father is Victor Chen. The room spun. Everything he'd believed about his identity, his heritage, his connection to Richard Kane, all of it was a lie. Your mother never told Richard the truth. She let him believe you were his son because she knew Victor would never let you go if he knew you were his. Ethan pulled his hand away from hers. You're lying. I'm not. Maya's tears were falling now. Victor's been destroying his own son for 25 years, and he doesn't even know it. As Maya stood to leave, Ethan realized the cruelest truth of all. The man who'd spent decades orchestrating his destruction was his real father. The man who'd raised him from a distance, who'd been proud of his achievements, who was dying in a federal prison cell, was just another victim of Victor Chen's revenge. And the woman he'd loved, who'd betrayed him to save her family, was the only person who knew the truth that could destroy them all. The door closed behind Maya, leaving Ethan alone with the devastating knowledge that everything he'd built his identity on was a lie. But in the distance, through the building's walls, he could hear his phone ringing. Someone was trying to reach him. Someone who might have answers about the letter Richard had mentioned. Someone who might know how to fight back against a father who'd never learned to love his own son. The phone kept ringing. Agent Morrison had left him alone in the interrogation room while she processed paperwork. Through the one-way glass, Ethan could see Maya being led away in handcuffs, not arrested but transferred to protective custody. Even her betrayal hadn't been enough to keep her safe from Victor's web. The ringing stopped, then immediately started again. Ethan's hands were shaking as he reached for the phone they'd forgotten to confiscate. Unknown number, but somehow he knew he had to answer. Ethan. The voice was elderly, female, unfamiliar. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Warren. I was your mother's mentor at Johns Hopkins. She asked me to call you if anything ever happened to her. Dr. Warren? Ethan's voice cracked. My mother's been arrested. I don't understand what's happening. I know, sweetheart. And I know why. There was a pause. Sarah gave me a letter 26 years ago. Made me promise to give it to you only if Victor Chen ever found you. She's been preparing for this day since before you were born. What letter? The truth about your father. About why she let Richard believe you were his son. About the choice she made to protect you from Victor. Dr. Warren's voice was gentle but urgent. Can you get to Johns Hopkins? I'm in the research wing, lab 247. And Ethan, don't trust anyone else. Victor has people everywhere. The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone, his mind racing. The FBI thought he was contained, but they'd gotten sloppy. The interrogation room door wasn't locked. They expected him to wait like a good prisoner for processing. He slipped out into the hallway. The federal building was chaos, agents running between rooms, phones ringing constantly, the machinery of justice grinding through Victor's carefully orchestrated destruction. No one noticed one more person in a suit walking purposefully toward the exit. The drive to Baltimore took 3 hours. 3 hours of radio news updates about the collapse of Kane Industries, the arrest of tech moguls, the investigation into the largest corporate espionage case in U.S. history. 3 hours of Ethan's phone buzzing with calls from reporters, lawyers, and investigators he ignored. But one call he couldn't ignore came as he pulled into the Johns Hopkins parking garage. Maya. Ethan, don't go to Johns Hopkins. Her voice was panicked. It's a trap. Victor knows about the letter. How do you? Because I told him. Maya's voice broke. Ethan, they have my father. Victor's son James has him, and they're hurting him. I had to tell them about Dr. Warren. Ethan closed his eyes. Even now, even after everything, she was still choosing her family over him. Where are you? He asked. In a car with Victor. We're 20 minutes behind you. Maya was crying now. Ethan, please. Just run. Leave the country. I'll find a way to wire you money to. The phone was pulled away from her. Victor's voice came on the line. Hello, son. The word hit Ethan like a physical blow. Don't call me that. But you are my son. My brilliant, stubborn, idealistic son who's about to learn the final lesson I've been trying to teach you for 25 years. What lesson? That love is weakness. That trust is suicide. That the only way to survive in this world is to destroy others before they destroy you. Victor's voice was almost gentle. Your mother learned that lesson too late. Richard never learned it at all. But you're going to learn it perfectly. What are you talking about? Dr. Warren isn't just your mother's mentor, Ethan. She's my sister. Has been feeding me information about Sarah for 26 years. The letter you're about to read? I wrote it. Ethan's world collapsed again. That's impossible. Is it? How many times do you need to be betrayed before you understand? Everyone you trust, everyone who claims to love you, is working for me. Because I made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Through the phone, Ethan could hear Maya sobbing in the background. Even Maya? Ethan whispered. Especially Maya. Do you want to know why she really agreed to spy on you? Not to save her father. Not to protect her family. Victor's voice turned cruel. Because I promised her that if she delivered you to me, I'd let her keep you. Forever. What does that mean? It means she's been in love with you for 3 years, and she thought she could save you by betraying you. She thought if she gave me everything else, Richard Kane Industries' axiom, I'd let the two of you disappear together. Ethan felt sick. And will you? Of course not. Love is weakness, remember? And I'm about to prove it to both of you. The call ended. Ethan sat in his car, staring at the research building where Dr. Warren waited with a letter that might not even be real. Behind him, Victor Chen was driving toward him with the woman Ethan loved. The woman who'd betrayed him to save him, who'd destroyed everything to preserve something that was never going to be allowed to exist. His phone buzzed with a text. A photo. Richard Kane in a hospital bed, tubes and wires monitoring his failing body. The cancer had accelerated under the stress of his arrest. He looked like he was dying. Another text. He's asking for you. Room 412, Washington General. You have 30 minutes before the infection takes him. A third text. Choose wisely, son. Save the man who raised you, or save the woman who betrayed you. You can't do both. Ethan looked at his phone, then at the research building, then at the highway that led back to Washington. Victor had engineered the perfect torture. Force him to choose between the dying man who'd been a father to him and the woman he loved who was trapped in Victor's web. But there was a fourth option Victor hadn't considered. Ethan started his car and drove away from Johns Hopkins, away from Washington, away from all of it. He was done being a piece in Victor's game. Done letting other people's choices define his life. As he drove north toward the Canadian border, his phone rang one final time. Maya's number. He almost didn't answer. But something in him needed to hear her voice one more time. Ethan. She sounded terrified. Where are you? Gone, he said simply. You can't just leave. Richard is dying. Her voice broke. I'm pregnant. The words hit him like a car crash. What? 2 months. I found out last week. Maya was sobbing now. Ethan, it's yours. The baby is yours. Ethan pulled over to the side of the highway, his hands shaking. Maya. Victor doesn't know. Nobody knows. But if you disappear, if you don't fight for us, her voice was desperate. He'll make me marry James. He'll raise your child as a Chun. And you'll never see either of us again. Through the phone, Ethan could hear Victor in the background, giving orders, orchestrating the final act of his 25-year revenge. I can't do this anymore, Ethan whispered. I can't keep fighting a war where everyone I love is a weapon pointed at my heart. Then don't fight for them, Maya said quietly. Fight for us. Fight for the baby who's going to need a father who doesn't abandon the people he loves. The words cut through him like a blade. Abandon. Like Richard had abandoned him. Like Victor had abandoned the possibility of being a real father in favor of revenge. Maya, I know you don't trust me. I know you think everything between us was a lie. But this baby wasn't part of anyone's plan. This baby is the one real thing in all of Victor's manipulations. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 25 years of abandonment and betrayal crushing down on him. He could keep driving, disappear into anonymity, let Victor win completely. Or he could turn around and fight for a future where his child didn't grow up the way he had. Caught between the love and hatred of parents who'd turned each other into weapons. Where are you? He asked. Johns Hopkins. Lab 247. With Victor and Dr. Warren. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Ethan, whatever's in that letter, whatever truth they're going to show you, remember that some truths are weapons. And some lies are the only way to protect the people you love. The call ended. Ethan sat on the side of the highway, watching cars pass by carrying people toward normal lives he'd never be able to have. In the distance, storm clouds were gathering, and he could hear thunder rolling across the mountains. He thought about Richard, dying alone in a hospital room, asking for the son who wasn't biologically his, but who he'd loved anyway. He thought about Maya, carrying his child while trapped in a web of family obligations and impossible choices. He thought about Victor, waiting to complete his revenge by destroying everyone who'd ever meant anything to the son he'd never bothered to claim. And he thought about the child Maya was carrying, his child, who would grow up in the aftermath of whatever choice he made next. Ethan turned his car around and headed back toward Baltimore, toward the letter that would either give him the weapons to fight Victor or destroy the last illusions he had about the people who'd shaped his life. The storm was coming, and this time he was going to meet it head-on. But first, he had to decide which truth he was strong enough to live with, and which lies he was willing to die for. Dr. Elizabeth Warren looked exactly like Sarah Kane, the same determined jawline, the same intelligent eyes that seemed to see through every lie. When Ethan walked into Lab 247, she was standing beside Victor Chin, and the family resemblance was unmistakable. "Hello, Ethan," she said gently. "You look just like your mother did at your age." Victor stood in the shadows by the window, watching. Maya sat in a chair nearby, her hands protectively over her still flat stomach, her eyes red from crying. The scene felt like a twisted family reunion. "The letter," Ethan said. "I want to read it." Dr. Warren held out an envelope, sealed and yellowed with age. Ethan's mother's handwriting on the front. "For my son, when the truth can no longer be hidden." Ethan's hands shook as he opened it. "My dearest Ethan, asterisk if you're reading this, then Victor has finally found us, and I'm probably dead or in prison. I need you to know the truth I've spent 26 years hiding. Asterisk. Asterisk Victor Chin is your biological father. But Richard Kane is the man who chose to be your dad. Asterisk. Asterisk I was engaged to Victor when I met Richard at a conference in 1998. Victor was brilliant, driven, obsessed with building an empire. But he was also cruel in ways that scared me. When I fell in love with Richard, Victor's response was to try to destroy both of us. Asterisk. Asterisk when I discovered I was pregnant with you, I was faced with an impossible choice. Tell Victor the truth and watch him use you as a weapon against Richard for the rest of your life. Or let Richard believe you were his and give you a chance at a normal childhood. Asterisk. Asterisk I chose to lie. To everyone, asterisk. Asterisk but Victor suspected. He's been watching, waiting, gathering evidence. The money he sent through Richard wasn't guilt or love, it was a test. Every dollar tracked, every transaction documented. He was building a case to prove you were his son, so he could claim you when the time was right. Asterisk. Asterisk Richard never knew. He loved you as his own because in every way that matters, you are his own. But Victor has spent 25 years orchestrating this moment, when he could take everything from Richard and claim everything that should have been his. Asterisk. Asterisk you have a choice to make, my son. You can be Victor's heir, brilliant, powerful, and empty. Or you can be Richard's legacy, kind, innovative, and whole. Asterisk. Asterisk choose love over power. Choose the family you build over the one you were born into. Asterisk. Whatever happens to me, know that every moment of your life has been worth the lies I told to protect it. All my love. Mom. Asterisk P.S. The real patent documents are in Safety Deposit Box 247 at First National Bank, Baltimore. Maya's work is under her name, where it belongs. I made sure of that years ago. Asterisk. Ethan finished reading and looked up to find Victor watching him with an expression that might have been pride. Now you know, Victor said. You're my son. My heir. Everything I built was meant for you. Everything you built was meant to destroy the people I love. Victor stepped closer. Love is the weapon they used to control you, Ethan. Richard used it to steal you from me. Sarah used it to lie to you for 26 years. Maya used it to betray you. His voice turned gentle, paternal. But I'm offering you something better than love. I'm offering you power. Maya spoke up from her chair. The baby changes everything, Victor. You can't. Can't what? Victor's eyes snapped to her. Raise my grandchild properly? Teach them that strength matters more than sentiment. The baby isn't yours to raise, Ethan said firmly. Victor smiled. Isn't it? Maya is going to marry my son James. The child will be raised as a Chin, with all the advantages that brings. Unless, of course, you want to claim your rights as the biological father. The trap closed around Ethan like steel jaws. What are you talking about? Dr. Warren spoke up. Victor has legal custody of Maya under a conservatorship arrangement. Her uncle, concerned about her mental health after her betrayal of Axiom Technologies. She can't make decisions about marriage, children, or medical care without his approval. That's impossible, Ethan turned to Maya. You can't agree to that. Maya's eyes were full of tears. I didn't have a choice. After I was arrested, after the FBI released me into his custody, my father's gambling debts, Ethan. Victor owns them. If I don't comply with the conservatorship, my father dies. But if you claim paternity, Victor continued smoothly, and agree to join Chen Holdings as my heir, Maya's conservatorship can be dissolved. You'll have full custody of your child, and Maya will be free to choose her own life. The impossible choice crystallized in Ethan's mind. Accept Victor as his father, take over the empire built on revenge and cruelty, and save Maya and their child. Or refuse, and watch Victor raise his grandchild while Maya remained trapped in a legal prison. There's a third option, Dr. Warren said quietly, but it requires the ultimate sacrifice. Victor's expression darkened. Elizabeth, we discussed this. No, Victor. You dictated it. Dr. Warren turned to Ethan. Your mother left you one more gift. A legal document that transfers all of Richard's assets to you upon his death, but only if you can prove you're his chosen heir, not his biological son. She handed Ethan another envelope. Richard's will, written and revised 17 times over the years. Every version names you as his heir, with one condition, that you choose love over blood. Ethan opened the will with shaking hands. The language was clear. Everything Richard had built would go to Ethan, but only if he legally renounced any claim to being Victor's biological son. Only if he chose Richard as his father, permanently and irrevocably. He knew, Ethan whispered. Richard knew I wasn't his biological son. He's known since you were 3 years old, Dr. Warren confirmed. He had his own DNA test done, but it didn't matter to him. He chose to be your father anyway. Victor's face was a mask of rage. If you sign that renunciation, you lose everything I've built for you. Everything I've planned. But I keep the family I chose, Ethan said, understanding finally dawning. Maya stood up from her chair. There's something else. Something Victor doesn't know. She looked directly at her uncle. I'm not pregnant. The words hit the room like a bomb. Victor's face went white. I lied, Maya continued. Because I needed time. Time for Ethan to read the letters, to understand his choices. Time for Richard to prepare his final gift. She pulled out her phone and showed them all a text message. Patent transfers complete. Axiom Technologies legally belongs to Maya Chen as of 3:47 p.m. today. Richard Kane. Richard isn't dying in a hospital, Maya said. He's in a law office, transferring every asset he has to the people he loves. The cancer story, the arrest, we staged all of it to keep Victor focused on Ethan while Richard dismantled everything Victor thought he was going to win. Victor's empire was crumbling in real time. Without Axiom's technology, without Richard's assets, without the leverage of Ethan's parentage, 25 years of planning was falling apart. You clever girl, Victor whispered, but there was no affection in it. Only fury. I learned from the best, Maya replied. But unlike you, I learned that love isn't weakness. It's the only strength that matters. Victor pulled a gun from his jacket. Then you can die for love. The room froze. Dr. Warren stepped between Victor and Maya, her hands raised. Victor, she's your niece. She's family. Family is what betrayed me, Victor snarled. Sarah chose Richard. Ethan chooses Richard. Maya chooses Ethan. Everyone chooses someone else. Ethan stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. What if someone chose you? Victor's gun hand wavered. What? What if I choose you as my father, but not your empire? What if I choose to love you without becoming you? For a moment, Victor looked like a lost child. You can't love me. I'm the monster who destroyed your life. You're the man who spent 25 years trying to win back what he thought he'd lost. You're my father, and you're broken, and you need help. Victor's gun slowly lowered. I don't know how to be a father without being a weapon. Then learn, Ethan said gently. Choose love over power. Choose building something new over destroying something old. Maya stepped closer to both of them. We can be a family, Victor. All of us. But not if you're holding a gun. Victor looked at the weapon in his hand like he'd never seen it before. Then he set it down on the lab bench and collapsed into a chair, 25 years of rage and pain finally breaking through his armor. I loved her, he whispered. I loved Sarah so much, and she chose him. She chose love, Dr. Warren said softly. Just like you can choose love now. Ethan knelt beside Victor's chair. I'm your son. I'm Richard's son. I'm Maya's partner. I can be all of those things without destroying any of them. Maya joined them, taking Victor's hand. Uncle Victor, I never stopped loving you. Even when I hated what you were doing. Victor looked up at them, his son, his niece, his sister, and for the first time in 25 years, chose something other than revenge. How? He asked. How do we fix what I've broken? Ethan smiled. One day at a time. One choice at a time. Starting with letting Richard come home. Outside, thunder rumbled as the storm finally broke. But inside Lab 247, three people who'd been used as weapons against each other began the long work of choosing to be a family instead. The war was over. Now came the harder task, learning how to live in peace. Richard Kane walked into the lab like he'd never been sick a day in his life. Victor's head snapped up, his face cycling through confusion, rage, and something that might have been relief. You're supposed to be dying. I was, Richard said calmly, settling into a chair across from his former partner. 25 years ago, when I lost my best friend over a woman who loved us both. The room went silent. Ethan looked between the two men, his adoptive father and biological father, and realized there were still layers to this story he didn't understand. Maya spoke first. Richard, what are you talking about? Richard smiled at her, then turned to Ethan. Son, there's something I need to tell you about the night you were conceived. Victor's face went white. Richard, don't. Sarah never chose between us, Richard continued, ignoring Victor's protest. She loved us both. And one night, when we were all celebrating the completion of our first AI prototype, when we'd had too much wine and too many dreams. Stop, Victor whispered. We both loved her. And for one night, she loved us both. Richard's voice was gentle but firm. We never knew which of us was Ethan's biological father. But it didn't matter, because we were both going to raise him together. Ethan felt the world tilt again. Both of you? The original plan was for Kane and Chin Technologies to become a family business in every sense, Richard explained. Victor was going to be your uncle and godfather. I was going to be your father. We were going to share everything, the company, the family, the future. Maya looked at Victor, who had buried his face in his hands. What happened? I got scared, Victor said, his voice muffled. When Sarah got pregnant, when it became real, I panicked. I was 25 years old, and I was terrified of being responsible for a child. So I sabotaged everything. Richard nodded sadly. He started making demands. Wanted to restructure the company so he had complete control. Wanted to move the family to Taiwan so he could be near his parents. Wanted to make decisions about how the baby would be raised before the baby was even born. I thought, Victor said, looking up with tears in his eyes, that if I controlled everything, I could protect everyone. But I just drove everyone away. So Sarah chose the man who wasn't trying to control her future, Ethan realized. And I spent 25 years convincing myself that I'd been betrayed instead of admitting that I'd destroyed the thing I loved most, Victor finished. Richard leaned forward. Victor, I need you to understand something. When you left that night, when you walked away from the company and the family, Sarah cried for 3 days. She loved you. We both did. Then why? Because you wouldn't let us love you the way you were. You needed us to love you the way you thought you should be. Richard's voice was infinite gentle. And Ethan's son, I need you to understand something too. Ethan braced himself for another revelation. The cancer is real. I am dying. But not from pancreatic cancer, from a genetic condition that I've known about for 40 years. The same condition that killed my father at 71. Richard smiled. I have maybe 2 years left. And I decided to spend them fixing the biggest mistake of my life. Maya was staring at Richard with dawning comprehension. The acquisition offer. The FBI investigation. All of it was real, but orchestrated by me and a very talented team of lawyers and investigators, Richard confirmed. I needed Victor to believe he was winning, so he'd get close enough for us to have this conversation. Victor was shaking his head. You manipulated me for months. Made me believe I was destroying you. I gave you what you thought you wanted, complete victory over the Kane family, so you could discover that victory without love is just elaborate suicide. Richard reached out and took Victor's hand. Victor, I forgive you. For leaving. For the 25 years of anger. For trying to destroy my son. I forgive all of it. Victor broke. 25 years of carefully controlled rage crumbled into sobs that shook his entire body. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I loved you both so much, and I was so scared of losing you that I threw you away first. Richard pulled Victor into an embrace that looked like two broken pieces of the same soul finally reconnecting. We never stopped loving you, brother. We just didn't know how to reach you. Ethan watched his two fathers holding each other and felt something shift in his chest. All his life, he'd thought love meant choosing sides. But watching Richard and Victor, he realized love meant making room for everyone at the table. "There's more," Maya said quietly. "Something I need to tell all of you." She pulled out her phone and showed them a photo from her doctor's appointment that morning. An ultrasound image. "I lied about lying," she said, her voice trembling. "I really am pregnant. 8 weeks. I got the confirmation this morning." Victor and Richard both turned to stare at her, then at Ethan. "A baby," Victor whispered. "A real baby." "Your grandchild," Ethan said, taking Maya's hand. "If you want to be a grandfather instead of a weapon." Victor looked at the ultrasound image like it was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. I don't know how to be a grandfather." "Neither do I," Richard said with a laugh. "But I suppose we'll figure it out together." Maya smiled through her tears. "Actually, there's one more thing." She pulled out another set of papers. "The patent documents your mother mentioned, Ethan? I found them. Not just the Axiom patents. The original Kane and Chin Technologies patents from 1998. Your mother had them rewritten to list all 3 of you as co-inventors. Richard, Victor, and Sarah Chin Kane." "Sarah Chin Kane?" Victor's eyes widened. "She never legally changed her name back to Sullivan," Maya explained. "She stayed Sarah Chin Kane for 25 years. She was waiting for the family to be whole again." Richard was reading the patents with wonder. "She kept all our names together. Even after everything, she believed we'd find our way back to each other." Victor stood and walked to the window, looking out at the storm that was finally breaking. "How do we do this? How do we be a family after 25 years of being enemies?" Ethan joined him at the window. "The same way Mom and Richard raised me after you left. One day at a time. One choice at a time. And if I mess it up again? Then we'll forgive you again," Maya said, joining them. "That's what families do." Richard stood slowly, his illness more apparent now that the crisis was over. "There's one last thing we need to do." He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Hello, Sarah? It's Richard. I'm here with Victor and Ethan and Maya. We're ready for you to come home." Through the phone, they could all hear Sarah Kane's sobs of relief. "Is it really over?" "It's really over," Richard said. "Come home, Sarah. Come meet your granddaughter-in-law and hear about your grandchild." Victor was crying again, but this time with joy. "She's really coming home?" "She's been waiting in a hotel in Baltimore for 3 days," Richard admitted. "Ready to come running the moment I called." Ethan realized this too had been planned. His mother, the woman who'd sacrificed everything to protect him from a war between the men she loved, had been close enough to come home the moment the war ended. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked Richard. "Since the day I was diagnosed," Richard replied. "I realized I didn't want to die with this broken family on my conscience. So I started planning a way to fix it. By breaking it first? By forcing everyone to choose love over fear." Richard smiled. "And it worked. Victor chose love over revenge. You chose love over abandonment. Maya chose love over safety. And your mother chose love over protection." Maya was looking at the ultrasound image again. "What do we do now?" Victor answered first. "Now we build something new. Not Kane Industries or Chin Holdings, but something that belongs to all of us." "Chin Kane Sullivan Technologies?" Ethan suggested with a smile. "Sullivan?" Richard asked. "Maya's keeping her name, I'm keeping mine, and the baby gets all of them," Ethan explained. "Our child is going to be a Chin Kane Sullivan. The living symbol of a family that chose love over blood, forgiveness over revenge, and building over destroying." Richard nodded approvingly. "Sarah's going to love that." Victor was quiet for a long moment, then spoke. "I want to be a good grandfather. I want to be the man Sarah and Richard believed I could be 25 years ago." "You already are," Maya said gently. "You put down the gun. You chose love. Everything else is just practice." Outside, the storm was ending. Sunlight broke through the clouds, casting rainbows across the Baltimore skyline. Inside Lab 247, a family that had been broken for 25 years finally learned the truth that Sarah Kane had known all along. Love isn't about choosing sides. It's about making room for everyone at the table. And sometimes, the longest way home is worth every step of the journey. 6 months later, Ethan stood in the nursery of their new home in Palo Alto, watching Maya paint the final touches on a mural that told their family's story. It wasn't the traditional bears and balloons most nurseries featured. Instead, she'd painted a tree with roots that went deep and branches that reached in every direction, each branch representing a different family member who'd found their way home. The FBI cleared all the charges, Richard called from the doorway, his voice weaker now but still warm with pride. Victor's testimony about the manufactured evidence sealed it. Kane Technologies is officially legitimate. Maya looked up from her painting, her 6-month pregnancy showing in the gentle curve of her body. And the patents, all restored to their rightful owners. Your quantum neural network breakthrough is properly credited to you. Ethan's AI empathy protocols are under his name. And the original 1998 work is credited to all 3 founders, Richard Kane, Victor Chun, and Sarah Kane. Victor appeared beside Richard, carrying tea for Maya and medication for Richard. It had taken months for Victor to learn how to be helpful instead of controlling, but he'd thrown himself into the work of becoming a better man with the same intensity he'd once devoted to revenge. He'd sold Chun Holdings and donated most of the proceeds to causes supporting abandoned children and single mothers. His way of atoning for the family he'd abandoned 25 years ago. "Mom's here," Ethan announced, hearing the front door open. Sarah's voice carried up the stairs, laughing with the housekeeper about baby preparations. The past 6 months had been a careful dance of rebuilding trust. Sarah had moved into a guest house on the property, close enough to be part of their daily lives, but far enough to give the young family space to grow. She'd returned to medicine, working at a free clinic, finally able to use her healing gifts without the weight of old secrets. "Dinner's ready," Sarah called. "And Victor, your son James is here." The addition of James Chun to their family dynamics had been the most surprising development. Victor's son from his marriage in Taiwan had flown to America, expecting to find his father had finally achieved his revenge. Instead, he'd found a man learning to choose love over power, and slowly, carefully, James had started learning the same lesson. They gathered around the dinner table, Ethan, Maya, Richard, Victor, Sarah, and James. The conversation flowed in 3 languages, with laughter and gentle teasing, updates on the new company, and excited speculation about the baby who would arrive in 3 months. "I have news," Maya announced during dessert. The ultrasound confirmed it. "We're having a daughter." Victor's eyes filled with tears. "A granddaughter. What will you name her?" Sarah asked. Ethan and Maya exchanged a look. They'd spent weeks discussing this, wanting to honor the complexity of their family without burdening their daughter with too much history. "Hope Elizabeth Canchin Sullivan," Maya said. "Hope for obvious reasons. Elizabeth for Dr. Warren, who helped us find the truth. And all 3 last names because she belongs to all of us." Richard smiled, though Ethan could see the effort it cost him. The genetic condition was progressing faster than they'd hoped. "Hope Elizabeth. She's going to change the world." "Speaking of changing the world," Victor said, "the board approved our proposal. Kane Technologies will focus exclusively on AI that serves human connection rather than replacing it. Maya's breakthrough in quantum empathy mapping will be our flagship technology." James looked up from his tablet. "The early beta tests are incredible. AI that can actually understand and respond to human emotional needs without being manipulative or invasive. Technology that brings families together instead of driving them apart," Ethan added. "It feels right." After dinner, Ethan found himself on the back porch with Richard, watching the sunset paint the California hills in shades of gold and purple. These quiet moments with his father, his chosen father, had become precious as Richard's health declined. "Do you regret any of it?" Richard asked. "The chaos, the revelations, the pain we all went through?" Ethan considered the question. 6 months ago, he'd thought his life was built on self-reliance and earned success. He'd discovered instead that love had been supporting him all along. His mother's sacrifices, Richard's quiet pride, even Victor's complicated attempts at protection from a distance. "No," he said finally. "I understand now that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when you're broken. Especially when you're broken." Richard nodded slowly. "Your daughter is going to grow up knowing she's loved by so many people. She'll never have to wonder if she's worth staying for." "Neither will you," Ethan said quietly. "You chose to stay for me every day for 25 years, even when I didn't know it. Now I choose to stay for you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. In the house behind them, Maya was playing piano while Victor attempted to sing along in Mandarin, much to everyone's amusement. Sarah's laughter carried through the open windows, the sound of a woman who'd finally stopped carrying the weight of impossible choices. "There's something I need to tell you," Richard said. "About the company succession plan." "Richard." "No, this is important." Richard's voice carried the authority that had made him a successful CEO, but also the gentleness that had made him a good father. When I'm gone, Kanchan Technologies doesn't go to you automatically. It goes to whoever the board believes can best carry forward our mission of building technology that serves love instead of replacing it. Ethan understood. You want us to earn it. I want you to choose it. Every day. The way I chose to be your father every day, even when biology said otherwise. Richard smiled. Love is always a choice, son. And the best love is the kind people choose again and again. Maya appeared in the doorway, her hand resting on her growing belly. Are you two planning to stay out here all night? Hope is doing her evening gymnastics routine, and Victor wants to feel her kick. The image of Victor, once so controlled and intimidating, getting excited about feeling his granddaughter's movements struck Ethan as the perfect symbol of how much their family had changed. People could transform. Broken things could be rebuilt. Love could triumph over even the deepest wounds. As they walked back into the house together, Ethan realized that the signature on those acquisition papers 6 months ago hadn't been the end of his story. It had been the beginning. The beginning of understanding that family isn't just about who shares your DNA or who raises you, but about who chooses to show up for you, day after day, in all the messy complexity of human love. Maya took his hand as they rejoined their family in the living room. Victor was kneeling beside her chair, his palm gently pressed against her belly, his face lit up with wonder every time Hope moved. Sarah sat nearby, knitting tiny booties and humming an old lullaby. James was showing Richard something on his tablet. Probably work, but Richard was listening with the patience of a man who'd learned that paying attention to the people you love is the most important job in the world. This was what Ethan had been searching for his entire life without knowing it. Not the validation of success or the satisfaction of revenge, but the simple, complex, beautiful chaos of a family that chose to love each other despite their flaws. Hope Elizabeth Kanchan Sullivan kicked again, and Victor laughed with pure joy. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain in its details but certain in its foundation. They would face challenges, make mistakes, hurt each other's feelings, and have to forgive and rebuild again and again. But they would face it all together, as a family that had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the people who abandon you aren't giving up on love, they're just lost. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to fight for them, you can help them find their way home. 3 months later, when Hope Elizabeth took her first breath and opened her eyes to see 6 adults crying with joy around her hospital bed, she became the living proof that love multiplies when it's shared, that families can be rebuilt from the wreckage of old pain, and that the best inheritance anyone can leave is the knowledge that they are worthy of being chosen, again and again, for a lifetime. The war was over. The family was whole. And Hope Elizabeth Kanchan Sullivan would grow up knowing that love is always, always worth fighting for. What did this story teach you about forgiveness, chosen family, and the courage it takes to rebuild broken relationships? Sometimes the people we think have abandoned us are just as lost as we are, waiting for someone brave enough to reach out first. Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world.